Just curious. Richard Blumenthal, Democratic Senator for Connecticut, lawyer by profession, said, when asked whether the U.S. can afford to continue to send arms, or whatever that means these days, to Ukraine, with a smirk, the United States is the greatest country on the face of the earth ever. This was to suffice enough, the smirk and the statement, but then he continued, of course, we can always afford to save democracy. This is paraphrase, I'm afraid. I can't find the original. It was recent and impromptu, maybe a Sunday show. This is, I suppose, the desire to spread American leadership in the world. A dropped phrase one hears a lot. People like David Frum and Madeleine Albright used to say that kind of thing. I think it really motivates people in that business. It's a zeal. I think Russell Crowe on a YouTube short talked about the American beacon. He from Australia. I from England wonder what he means. Really no idea, unless it is just an idea. How people feel about their nation is their own business, and there are English personalities and scholars very proud of Englishness, the history, etc. There was a time, wasn't there, that neither started nor ended well. Do David and Russell think the rest of the world thinks, oh, if only we were American, not Indian or Samoan or Japanese? I think, I live here, that it is fab, but I'm pretty sure the Swiss or the French or the Indians feel the same about Basel or Grenoble or Mumbai. And if they don't, there's lots of evidence over there of people trying to change, to improve their countries. Does Blumenthal believe this on any significant level? Do I believe this? At what age does one come to this conclusion? Is there an age where a person, he is 78, Richard, says it is a silly notion that anyone, any country, any football team even is the greatest ever? Do I believe the belief is harmful? Whoever believes it, yep. It may just be this time around due to the personnel or a change in strategy to combat MAGA, etc. I don't know, but I seem to remember less of it in the Democratic Party, that we were not the New Jerusalem and they were not the Canaanites, a sense that they being, Bolivia, that we were not, a sense that we, America or England or France, have a lot of work to do. The planet is war-torn, environmentally in huge trouble, and we, as the richer nations, have a lot to do with causing both challenges. We should consider our status quo and make the changes necessary with great pride. But just as with an individual psychology, if you have convinced yourself you are the greatest, you have a tendency to assume you are incapable of being and doing wrong. So if things are wrong, it is somebody else's fault. Does that sound relevant? It is Islam, China, Putin, Yemen, Venezuela, and slightly bending logic. Political thinkers are starting to blame Israel for what is happening in Gaza. They do shoulder a load, they do pull the triggers, but without the arms, they do something else with their outrage. In other words, it is their fault. It is Putin's fault. It is all of these faults. But we share in it. We are part of the world. Without exorbitant aid for 75 years, another solution might have been reached in the Middle East. The response that, yes, Israel would have been swept from the earth without U.S. support requires me to imagine what is currently in the minds of many involved. Arabs and Islam are inferior, inherently evil. I actually believe that the monotheisms are the source of evil, claiming the opposite, which must be a natural law. It happens so often, but I believe it of all of them. the big three and the sects within each. There is no greatest religion, which seems to be their premise. Now watch. If they could be happy and satisfied they have a great religion, one among a few at least, the terrain is utterly changed. That is a whole other belief, a totally different responsibility too. With greatness comes responsibility. Being the greatest, there is none. The greatest can do no wrong. Kamala was a prosecutor, apparently of some zeal, a punisher of evil. That was an ambition, she has said, to want to improve society by punishing those who threaten it. Your society demands some serious care, some vigilance. The zealot prosecutor is not my friend. There were inquisitors who were sorry for their torture victims, but they had taken on the task of purifying the world. They knew we were the greatest, the one, only faith. No, no. Otherwise, we would be friends of Israel without arming them. We would be cautious with China without glibly demonizing them. We'd understand Russia standing up to incursions by NATO. We have the Monroe Doctrine. We might go as far as to say that if BRICS colluded to convince Mexico to ally with them and treat the U.S. as a threat to world peace, we'd move hard and fast. Claims of the greatest are evidence of immaturity and possibly a big dose of feeling the opposite, in fact. And based on the evidence, the history, there is much reason for that. Being the greatest means a lot of revising needs doing in America and in Europe. Being great can acknowledge even terrible acts committed by us, not a few bad apples. Kamala and Richard are cursed by this belief, and I'd not put it past them. The days when I thought politicians with law degrees were morally elevated because of their choice of profession and the degree are over. As I grew up, this psychosis was inflamed by foreigners, the red tide, the yellow peril, then Islam. Now, naturally, we are commanded to vote to prevent the evil within. It's a natural progression, guys. When the wall came down and now the old enemy is a new market, and we fell for it, hook, line, and deplorable. Now, I think I know what motivates the present Democratic Party. It was confusing, but no more. They are zealots. Satan is back in the social media, in MAGA, and just like the church around about the time Columbus reached India, oops, the unconvinced are chattering and need suppressing. Some of the evidence is in how angry you all are. I am speaking, you plebs, she seemed to say. The zealotry might be triggered by Trump, and what a trigger he is, but it is zealotry nonetheless. I guess it is understandable to grow up here or in Victorian England, to be educated there, and to stand up adult thinking we need to export this amazing way, this culture, this civilization, this democracy, maybe this Jesus. Do not ask the working class of London in the Victorian era to assume that their lonely eyes all turn to us, except it is possible they don't. I might think if the Russians and Chinese wanted this corrupted and corruptible thing we call democracy, they'd have engineered that. They had a look, maybe, had a go even, and turned away like we do. We have decided the weird and deplorable are just wrong. The enemy we must stop at all costs. Even Bernie said that. It may be true, it may be righteous and joyous, but it's not democratic. And we are a ridiculous example of one right now.